All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Sebo?
Well, it's Friday, so we have our Wheel of Time. We're going to try to get through it today. Uh, and sorry for the week off. I was out of the country and then I came back to a hurricane. So we didn't get to do an impromptu one right when I got back. But we're back on it. Hopefully, we get through this one. And then we just got one more book.
Yeah, and that's a lot of battle, so I'm curious. I haven't read it in a bit, and so I'm kind of curious what my notes are gonna be, what I'm gonna see to talk about with that one. But first things first, we got some comments from last time from Ideals Are Isomorphic. Scott, where you at, buddy? Hey. Um, Thanks, guys. You're welcome. Um, I really enjoyed the Avienda chapter. Now, one of the reasons I want to start off with this one is because this actually, um, uh, this actually kind of presages a lot of my comments on these last few chapters of um where certain things are much better because of hindsight, because of, oh, okay, so that thing there, now I like that scene, that moment better because now I see where it was going and what it was setting up. And then there are a few that are kind of, this could have been better if we had had more or different or better setup. Um, I really enjoyed the Avienda chapters. If I had to complain, then I would say that there is so much weight for the whole Aiel storyline packed into these couple of chapters, which is one of the problems with the last three books in general. Looking back at her Gathering Storm chapters, it does give them a new, deeper meaning. What's with knowing when to break authority and now tradition. But I wish there were more to chew on in those chapters so that I could enjoy them while reading, not only when looking back, which is a problem that a lot of modern storytellers are having that I'm noticing of um, even when you had TV shows that were sequential, like the classic shows, yeah, there might be a callback to something that happened in a previous season or earlier that season, but for the most part, an episode was an episode. You sit down, you turn off your brain and you entertain yourself for an hour, and then you go on about your life. And the next week, it's something different. But even when they were sequential, something like the Battlestar Galactica reboot, there were kind of filler episodes, standalone episodes, but for the most part, it was a continuous story. But each episode still felt more or less complete.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, cliffhangers are good, cliffhangers are exciting, but to me, the classic example is Empire Strikes Back because it is such a great movie. It is widely held to be the best of the Star Wars movie. It ends on a pretty effing big cliffhanger,
Mm-hmm.
but it still feels satisfying. It is, you still saw a complete story. Yeah, there are these other things that have to happen, that have to be revealed. Oh, Vader is Luke's father. Is what's up with that? They've got to get Han back, but there was still an arc there. There was still an ending, and you were still satisfied at the end of the movie. Um, there are some earlier on chapters that aren't as satisfying because, as Ideal said, there's just not enough meat on the bone there for you to enjoy. It's like, okay, I had a light snack. I'm still hungry now.
Well, with your Empire Strikes Back example, you also knew there was another movie coming after it.
Mhm.
You knew it wasn't Star Wars and we decided to make a sequel. It was, we are doing the Star Wars trilogy and it's going to be, this day, this day, this day. So you knew that the cliffhanger was going to be resolved, whereas you didn't know to look for this. It just showed up, what 10 books later in the
Yeah.
whole thing. So it's cliffhangers are great. This is one problem with the way modern shows are now. They make the decision whether to cancel it or not at the moment instead
Mhm.
of, oh, we're going to do 3 seasons of this. And if we decide to go further, we're going to leave it open where we can have a
And
different storyline. Now it's Netflix. Okay, you've got one season and it ends with a cliffhanger. Ratings weren't good enough. We're going to
And
discontinue this.
that is a huge problem with the streaming model, is that you don't have that instant feedback. With the old school way of doing things, you had the instant feedback of the ratings, and you knew, ooh, man, we got something here, or we need to make some adjustments, or oh crap, kill it, this is a bust.
Hmm.
You don't know that. Netflix puts up a bunch of money right up front, and you get a season, and then it's, oh hey, that worked, let's do another one. Okay, but now we got to wait a couple of years for the next One Piece season, because they had to wait until they knew, oh hey, we got something here, versus they put a bunch of money up front for Cowboy Bebop, and 3 weeks in they said, yeah, we're not doing the second season, this is a disaster.
Well, and there's also something to be said about the waiting. The previous sitcom model that you were talking about,
Mhm.
you had to wait till the next week to watch that one at that time during that time slot, and so you were waiting by the TV to be able to click it on and watch it. Whereas I'm actually noticing that with this read through and with my actual second read through when I decided to do it, say second read through of the entire series, because I did millions of read throughs anticipating the next book. But I personally, looking back, the changes we've made from mentality on like nine even stuff are different with the older age. But I liked having to wait for the next book. It made every book 10 times more exciting once it came out.
Mhm.
When you're just reading through the entire series, it almost becomes a slog
Mhm.
in and of itself, even when it's good.
Well, once again, to reiterate, especially if you've just joining us, or if you missed it, Ideals, our newer guy here, is I got into it because there were a group of 10 or a dozen nerds sitting in the lobby of our dorm. What the heck are you dorks talking about? And y'all were so excited, waiting for Path of Daggers, which came out, I think, like in that October or November. And I'm like, what is this? What are y'all talking about? And so I had to go out. I went to Hastings, which sadly doesn't exist anymore. I got the first book. I immediately went out and then bought every other book, because I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna finish this. Finish it. Heck, I'm gonna binge this. Yeah. Because of that excitement of everyone else. Um, I like this comment on Rand too, because this is interestingly, we finally, after a full book, we finally get a Rand POV, and it's in the epilogue, and it's kind of interesting. Uh, but I do like the Rand. I do like the new Rand that we see from other people's points of view, and this is a good insight. Rand explaining to Catswin what's what was a good way of showing his growth. He dropped the mic, but did it like an adult, without the negative emotions of "I put you in your place," as evidence when he remarks on independence of age and wisdom. So he puts Cadswin in her place, and then he's kind of self-deprecating. It's a great moment that genuinely shows, oh, hey, the showing not telling. Yeah, you are seeing that this is someone who has rapidly matured, is a
Yeah, and
very different person.
we might have touched on something important last time when we were talking about the Jordan versus Sanderson thing, because we talked so much in the last couple episodes of how it's great not having Rand's point of view as we're learning the new Rand, but I think that's a skill set thing. I think Jordan was better at writing the internal thoughts than Sanderson, but Sanderson's actually good at writing people from other people's point of view.
Mm,
And so that whether he did it on purpose or not, the fact that he did write Rand from other people's point of view might be why we think Rand is so well written. Where when we look at Matt, we get it from his point of view every time, and we're like, this
yeah,
is ridiculous.
and,
And
and
and you said something about it's Matt's internal thoughts that ruin it
yes,
all. Yeah.
because coming up there's actually a really nice moment after Matt's thing of this banter between Matt, Tom, and Moraine. And because there's no internal thoughts, because it's all dialogue, it's actually really good. It's a really good Matt moment, as well as just a really good moment. And that's a good point of it's probably because you don't have any internal thoughts. It's just dialogue.
Yeah, and so Sanderson will never see any of this or hear any of this critique. But if it the tenth of a millionth percent chance he ever gets a wind of something or somebody knows him and can give him advice, man, write your protagonist through other people's point of view because that's your
Mm.
you do so good at that.
Mhm.
Which I've
Um,
never read his other books, so I don't know if he does that to begin with, but
I can't remember because that's how sadly sorry, but his stuff is really forgettable to me. And that is something if we do some epilogue and kind of contrasting Sanderson and Jordan and why Jordan works so much more for me than Sanderson does. And I have some other examples of stuff I can bring into it as well. Um, all right. By the way, I finished the series a couple days back. Can't wait to discuss with you. Yeah, I've been eager to get to the very, very end for a long time now. Wait, I don't remember when it was that you made the point of focusing on Teleron and the world of dreams as much more integral to not just an interesting component of the world building, but actually a very important thread to the storyline, to the main plot, to the main
mhm.
story of what is going on and what ultimately happens. And there's a part of that I really want to get to because there's a lot of World of Dreams weirdness that happens in the last book. That while the last battle is going on, then there's all this World of Dreams fighting that's going on too. That's you see in a very different light if you're thinking about it while you're reading through the series. If you're thinking
Mhm.
about that end while reading through the series, it makes a lot of things go, oh, I think this connects to that.
Yeah.
Um, Sam had a good point on Ogier and fighting the Blight. It just makes sense. Instead, Mitre Sport. There's kind of some cool moments where you see them fighting in the last battle, but we already kind of had that cool moment. We had it one of the last things Jordan wrote for us was that moment where they take up the long handled axes and knives and go running out and shouting that Trollocs are coming when that huge group attacks Rand at the manor house in Knife of Dreams. And so you get that cool, oh, you've been waiting for it because the ogre are these literal gentle giants, and now they're about to stop being gentle. Well, you didn't need that in the last battle. Instead, I've referenced this before, but somebody who sounds really dumb because of the way he talks, but then you actually listen to him explaining things in detail. Go listen to Steve Austin talk about wrestling.
Hmm.
Stone Cold, the beer drinking brawler, and yet when he talks about crowd psychology, that a good, memorable wrestling match, it's not just and it's like this with really good action scenes too. One of the reasons we love Jackie Chan is because it's not just Bruce Lee was cool, but he was a little too I'm a badass, watch me beat the crap out of these people. Jackie Chan implemented this kind of vaudevillian sensibility in his fight scenes, which make them very interesting and memorable. One of the most memorable being the freaking ladder. What was that, First Strike?
Yeah,
That
that was First
that
Strike. Yeah.
wasn't a very good movie, and yet that scene is so freaking memorable because it's so clever and interesting. And
My
you know,
favorite is Super Cop. That's not for me. I'm too delicate. And then he
as a
fights that
whole,
guy. Yeah.
yeah, as a whole, that is my favorite movie of his because the movie itself is great. The fight scenes are great. The action scenes are great. That is got to be my favorite of his. Although Drunken Master is up there in like the top five.
Drunken
Anyway,
Master is on Amazon Prime right now, so you can watch that.
both of them or
Just the
just the first
first one. Well,
first one.
I don't know. I didn't look for the second one, but the first one popped up on my feed.
Um,
Uh,
but that is something
None
I
of them
kind
beat
of
Half a Loaf of Kung Fu though.
Half Life is pretty fun.
Half a Loaf is
Um,
great.
all of the ones with the how many of them are there that with Jackie, Samo, and what's his face? The third
Half a
wheel.
Loaf doesn't have those.
Oh, I thought it did. I
You're
thought it
thinking of the
was
Wheels on Meals series.
Wheels. Yes,
Yeah, yeah. Jackie
yeah,
Samo and Yun Biao. Yeah.
yes. Who's an incredible acrobatist. Anyway, but that's something I thought about in this comment made me think about in hindsight is that it, we've kind of touched on this, but kind of this comment really focuses in on take the fight between Rand and Turak. Um, one of the many reasons the series was awful because they blew it. That fight, not only is it incredible as reading an action moment, but it tells you a lot about Rand. That is a character moment. That's not just a fight. That's a character moment.
Well, it was a human development moment.
Mm-hmm.
He realized I just thought I was in the real world, and the real world just got more real. There's no end to what the real world has in store for me. And you talk about a kid that just realized he can channel, just went outside of his village for the first time ever and ended up at the eye of the world, then traveled across the world again and did the whole portal stone thing where he saw, you know, however many of his lives he can remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's facing a man one on one, a human man who just happens to be a swordsmaster with a sword. And it's like, wow, even the basics suck.
Yeah.
I just went through all of this human development in the metaphysical, in the fates, the uh, the end of the world is depends on me, and I'm here facing a man, and ow, those cuts hurt. It was actually a grounding moment, is what it was. It took him back to earth, realistically.
Mm-hmm. Um, all right. By the way, it just hit me that in book 3, Lanfear sees Matt naked. Took me a second to remember that, and it's after he's been healed by the dagger and he's in the White Tower, and Lanfear comes walking in and is trying to seduce him. And if not impressed, she did not seem underwhelmed. Even though she was the same height as Matt. Might be another reason Melinda actually fell for Matt. Tylan actually
It's the old Ron
referenced
Jeremy
that.
when he was on that game show, and she goes,
Yeah.
"You're awful short," and he goes, "Only when I'm standing up."
There's that Tylan, that is one of the great subtleties of Jordan. His way of writing is he um there's actually a moment here that in the prologue, the figs and mice, right?
Mhm.
Or in the epilogue, I mean, figs and mice is Jordan is great at that. And it's he's so good at it that he can tell you what he's doing and it doesn't matter. It's still great. I mean, he tells you in that chapter of figs and mice, yeah, this is what I'm doing. This is a trick, but it doesn't matter because I'm so good at the trick. I love illusionists. I love Penn and Teller. I know they're tricking me. I know it's a trick. I don't care because they're so good at it, you know? And he kind of does that with some of the more what would be salacious bits, but all the salaciousness is in your own head. He's not actually putting it on the paper. That's on you, man. You dirty, dirty sinner. Um,
Well, it's like the batter walking up and calling his shot,
mm,
pointing to the outside. It's like the pitcher just you just told the pitcher what you're going to do. Now it's perform. And
fun,
Jordan,
fun fact: the pitcher in that moment, he said, and a lot of other people on the field said, Ruth wasn't calling his shot. He was taunting me. He was pointing at me and trash talking. If he had been calling his shot, this is the pitcher. If he had been calling his shot, I'd have thrown the ball at his ear, and he would have because that was old school baseball. All right. Uh, Heath mentioned how you never found any fans of Avian on the forums. I can see why. I am a fan of her, but mostly because I have had on and off girlfriend like her. I met her in a gym I used to go to. She was in incredible shape, looked almost exactly as Avienda described in the books, behaved almost the same way. What's with the warrior spirit, the honor counter balanced by an unexpected occasional orgy in an igloo or a shack. And sure, we have to stand up and applaud you. Good for you. Good for you, bro. You go, bro. That's the bro clap there. That's the slow clap for finding the real life Avienda. But as soon as I tried to get her to emotionally open, she would be running off, running to Ruidine. She's on her fifth or sixth trip now. Well, maybe lucky number 7, she'll stick around. Uh, I hadn't thought about that as one of the reasons people didn't like Avienda because that is definitely the love hate kind of thing that I suspect almost all guys have had at least an experience. No, actually, I would say all guys. You directly, or you had a friend who had this girl, had the on again, off again, emotionally closed girl that would just either drive you crazy or drive you crazy watching your friend go through it and saying, man, why do you keep letting her do this to you? And
Well,
and
and sometimes you dated the Elaine and you realize how horrible that is, but you've been there, you know.
yeah, but with that, that masculine, emotionally closed off person, I hadn't thought of that as the reason maybe that people weren't fans of her. It- looking back on it, and when I was thinking about it after reading this comment, I kind of think that the reason is more that there just wasn't enough there. So as a contrast, Fail, um, there were kind of three types of people talking about Fail in the forums back in the day. It was, I hate her, she's such an annoying queen bee. There were the apologists of, well, yes, but here's why she is the way she is, both as a character and then as a literary device to kind of be part of Perrin's story. And then you would have the occasional, no, I like her because. Not very many, but there were people who were like, no, I like Fael because. I don't recall seeing that with Avienda, and I kind of suspect it has more to do with just the fact that, as we kind of complained about last time, and to the first comment there, there's just not enough there. There's some really interesting Avienda scenes in Knife of Dreams and Gathering Storm, and then you have these couple of chapters here where you have so much not just Aiel stuff but Avienda stuff crammed into just a couple of chapters, and it's, yeah, that's cool. Why didn't we get more of that beforehand?
Well, this is a tricky one because I think I see the pattern here and imagine trying to write this. Before the igloo scene, she was supposed to be closing herself off to Rand. That was the thing. She was
Mm-hmm.
closing herself off to him. And how do you write that? You know, maybe a little bit more from her perspective,
Yes.
but what we got from her perspective was her telling herself to be closed off.
Eh,
Whereas we could
uh-huh.
have gotten, I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, no, you can't. I feel this, I feel this, I feel this, no, you can't from her perspective. But then it would have been pretty much giving away the story.
And
So,
you get a little bit of that when she goes to Saladar and hooks up with Elaine. And you get a little bit of that of because you get some of her POV, and it's her trying to navigate this odd situation. We needed a little bit more of that. But before that, I still maintain that one simple thing that would have fixed a lot of this is some of those Egwene points of view from uh Shadow Rising and Fires of Heaven, when Egwene starts apprenticing and training with the Wise Ones, make some of those Avienda points of view. Because everything we get about Avienda there is from Egwene's point of view. And if we just would have just a few of those, just some small scenes of Avienda thinking about this, it also would have helped Egwene, I think, that if you get some of Avienda, there's some scenes where Avienda's looking at Egwene going, "What are you talking about? You're awesome." And the wise ones, when they want me to do better, they're always praising you. And if we would have gotten that from inside Avienda's head, I think it also would have helped Egwene, as far as her character and her likability goes.
well, when we talk parallel arcs and we think of Egwene and Rand, that might be part of the problem with Gawain is what we got with
Mm,
Rand was a compliment to him in three people. Where we got with Perrin, we got a compliment to him in one person, but he's also a much more simple design to
mhm,
complement. He needed that person who was less introverted. He needed that person who was more savvy to the court when he became a minor lord, in essence. But his character arc still is the blacksmith and the wolf. Well, I guess we got him with two characters. We got him with Hopper and Fail.
mhm.
Hopper and Fail kind of bring them together. And what we got with Egwene was Gawain, where maybe Gawain could have filled a certain void, but we could have had another secondary character fill a void and another secondary character fill a void. And Nynaeve, we get the closest thing to one man who can be one person for someone like that, which is Lan, who's we all agreed at the beginning is probably the only guy for the job at
Hmm.
that point. But Rand's role in the world is so complicated, you couldn't have put it in one person. So we needed these things. It just became, this is actually no pun intended, even though it's going to be. Uh, she's the redheaded stepchild of the three.
Hmm.
She's the one that filled this certain part, which was we need to attach you to the Aiel. We need to bring you back to your roots. And also, I'm not the polished leader that Elaine is. I'm not the philosopher that Min is. I am the hard-nosed, this is how tough life is person. And we get a little bit of that in her tutoring, but as the story progressed, Rand became harder than her instead of her helping him be hard when he needed to be.
And some more Avienda point of view would have helped both of those situations, because that could have, should have helped her realize, oh, oh, this ain't right.
Mm-hmm.
There's something, that could have, should have softened her when she saw how far overboard Rand was going. But almost all we get from her is, no, he's gaining much G. He is earning much honor. He is the Kara Karn. Oh, well, he has to do these things because, and while you can understand why Avienda would be looking at this hardness because she comes from such a hard life, we still should have had some moments where, even if she tells Min, because some of those scenes are Min telling her, I'm worried about Rand, and Avienda saying he does what he has to do. But if we had been inside her head instead of Min's, and actually saw that Avienda was saying that out loud, but thinking this could be a problem, that would do a lot for her character.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even you can use the hardness of the threefold land as a vessel for that message because yes, it's horrible as far as weather-wise. It'll scorch you in the day, so you're smart
Mm-hmm.
enough to be in the shade. May you find water and shade today. They say that. She could have brought this is when you need to be in the shade, not always out in the sun kind of message to him.
That's a good point, because a big part of her arc that we see here at the end is to, to the point on the comment, is the idea that, okay, tradition has to have a purpose, and you have to know the rules so you know when you can break the rules. And that would have been a moment of, we say, may you find water and shade. What does that mean? That has to mean something rather than just be a saying. All right. And then he had a point, he had an epilogue question. It was something we could, I put that in my notes. We can talk about that
Yeah, let's talk
when
about
we're
that when we get
done,
there. Yeah.
and we can rant and complain about Elaine all we want when we're done with the series. So now on to chapter 52, where we left off, page 757.
Speaking of Elaine,
Speaking of Elaine, which actually, one of my thoughts on this is, again, back to the economy of words. We didn't need this scene to be that. I don't know that we needed this scene at all, but we certainly didn't need it to be this long, because we already knew that Elaine was going to go claim um the throne of Karheen, and we already saw how she set it up, and she was doing it. So that's something Jordan does a lot, and is very, I think it really, uh I think it is one of the things that makes his writing so memorable and so good, is he'll actually give you more setup than he will the event. Think the battle around Karheen with the Shido.
mm-hmm.
We didn't need a play-by-play. We didn't need to dive deep into that. He just showed us some of it because he'd already shown us the plan. Because we had that moment with Matt and Lan looking at the map, so we already know what's going to happen. So now we just need, again, back to the original, back to the point about the Ogier is, so now when we actually get into the fight, and when we actually have the fight scenes, the battle scenes, he picks and chooses things that matter, like Rand and Egwene and Lavienda up on the tower, using the power to so we can see how that impacts the battle. And then also because then we get the strike from Samael. We see Matt trying to get the hell out of there, and he keeps, you know, wandering into bigger and bigger fights because that's the development of Matt. That we need that for the characterization of Matt. The bigger battle is less important. Um,
Well, and he keys in on certain things that have to do with character development, like you brought up with Matt. But also he keyed in when it comes to Rand on the lead up to basically all the women dying
mm,
with the lightning strike on the
yeah,
tower they were on.
yeah.
So that was the important part because that was part of Rand's adding to his list and becoming more and more nihilistic based on
Mm-hmm,
that. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Um, So here, there are only a couple of things in this whole sequence that kind of matter. One of which on page 759, um, she had this thought. Here it is. Gaibon approached on a large dappled gelding with Virgid on one side of her and Gaibon on the other, and with both of their horses taller than Elaine's, a would-be assassin would have great difficulty picking her off without first hitting her friends. So it would be for the rest of her life. That should hit really hard, but it doesn't because Elaine is a cold-hearted bitch.
Yeah, because you can kind of read into that as, oh, I should care about my friends and this should be bringing me down. But then it kind of just rolls right into, but I'm protected.
Hmm. Yeah, and and again, the frustration with Elaine is you get moments of that, but then it never changes her character. So again, man, I wish I could ask Jordan, was that on purpose? Because you have moments like when they're when her and Brigitte and Avienda are running from the Sanshin after they use the bowl, and she's trying to unravel the gateway. And it goes kaboomy, and there is a very much a an empathetic response of holy crap, and you know, a quality point for her character at that moment is that in that moment she cares more about what she almost did to Avienda and Brigitte than she does to herself, and that's a credit to her that isn't really carried forward, and
Hmm.
it's why her character becomes so frustrating. um The other thing that jumped out at me that I liked was here, the next page on page 760, when she meets the uh, uh, the Karhinan nobles that she had bantered with earlier to set all this up. There's this moment. Where is it? Here we go. He talking about Lorstrom, who is kind of the head manipulator here. Um, he knew she was manipulating him, but he also accepted that manipulation. I actually really like this line because what it should do is make you think about what's his face, the guy that is doing the same thing with Tawan.
Mm.
And there's this moment where they're having a discussion where Tawan actually, you know, he's not talking about that person, but is basically talking about this concept. And Matt is like, "Are you effing crazy?" And she's like, "That's the way it works." And Matt is thinking, "Man, Sanchin are nuts." No, that's just power.
Hmm.
That's just power and what it does to people and the kind of people who seek and grasp and hold that kind of power. People gonna people. So it's just like with the Sanchin, but just different because they have a different style in here than the Sanchin do. Um, and then the last thing is really kind of the end of this scene that I love, but perhaps not for reasons that Elaine would like me to like this, is that when she when she takes the throne, uh she one of the things she says is that the last thing she says, remember again, this is as the dragon reborn wishes it to be. She saw that they understood. Rand had conquered the city once, though it had been to liberate it from the Shido. They would be wise not to tempt him to come back and conquer it again. Elaine is very much an I don't need no man character until she does.
Hmm.
So you had this experience walking around with a chainsaw, cutting up trees. I don't need no man, but I've called a man to come do this for me. So you can go away now. So well, Elaine don't need no man, but don't push me or I'll have Rand come back and smack you down.
Yeah. We all need people. We all need different kinds of people in our lives. But if you outsource everything, you don't find out who you need until it's not there. And that's what happened in this area because I was actually, when I sent you that message that you just referred to, I was referring to the people complaining about on Facebook that their service people were overwhelmed or
Mm-hmm.
going and getting more money other places and stuff. It's like, you say I don't need no man, but you were dependent on men and men whose only connection to you was how much you were paying them. And as soon as someone paid them more, we saw this with the mercenaries in the last book. As soon
Good
as
point.
someone pays them more, they're going to go to that person. What you needed was human, you had a man. You needed human connection to a man. So when women say, I don't need no man, what they're saying is, I don't need no man that I actually have to be responsible for them needing me at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to say, here's some money.
Because that's extra work. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm already working a job. I'm already making money, so I'll just, you know, here's an exchange of currency for the thing that I need you to do, which is a lot easier than the let me put in the effort to create and maintain a human connection so that you just do it for me because you want to.
Yeah, and realistically, the part of me that's cynical wanted to just walk around to that specific kind of person and oh, you've got a chainsaw. Oh, great. And then just hand them the chainsaw.
Uh,
Because oh, you don't have the tool? Okay, here you go.
on a unrelated to this but related to that note, always make sure you tighten your chain a little extra tight because remember metal heats. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no,
just
no.
a
Yeah,
pro
I
tip
did
out there
slip. Yeah, I
for
did
any of
slip a
those.
chain once. But
It's when you're first getting used to it and you're like, why is this chain keeps, oh, because metal gets expands when it heats.
yeah.
So yep,
And by the way, you're
tighten
trying
it
to put
just a
that
little
back
extra.
on while it's overheated too. So if you don't have really thick
Mm-hmm.
leather gloves, it hurts. Uh
Oh, glad I got some welding gloves. Anyway, um, so then we switch to Matt's point of view, and uh, this is actually an interesting contrast with economy of words
well,
because
let me rewind for a second because you were
okay,
talking about that. This is also what made part of Elaine's story kind of a slog when she was taking over Andor, even because there was so much emphasis on I've got to do this without Rand. I've got to
mm-hmm,
do this in
mm-hmm.
spite of Rand. But when you really look back at it, because of the way she ran her life, because of the things her mother did, and all of these surrounding factors, none of it was possible without Rand. None of it was even Karheen. The only reason there's not another king or queen there right now is because he said this is for her. The only reason Camelin was the way it was, even after Gabriel was dead, was because the Aiel restored order in the streets. There would have already been a succession before she could have even
and
thought
and
about
Rand
going
made
there.
sure no one took the throne there while he
Exactly.
was there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so she got to do it her way, but only because he facilitated. And it's not because women can't do that. It's because she wasn't there.
Well, but and of course that is you touched on it, but the big effing number one reason is, oh yeah, Rand killed a frickin' Forsaken. Otherwise, you would have no chance.
Yeah, but that
That's
would be
important
more
too.
of a metaphysical power thing than a male versus female power thing.
Hmm.
Like you can imagine because of the way Robin fought, Egwene beating him.
Well, I mean, Nynaeve kind of defeated him,
Yep,
and
realistically,
Rand just
yeah.
finished him off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, where was it? Oh yeah. So okay. So then we switched to Matt's point of view, and this is where it's not that you know detailed description is a slog or it's being too wordy. It's no, it's why and when. Okay, it's been a while since we've seen Matt, and the last thing we saw was him fighting the golem, defeating the
Mhm.
golem. We kind of need a reset now. We need a bit of a reminder, and we need a reset, and we need to get back in Matt's mind, not just behind his eyes because it's from his point of view, but you get a couple of really great scenes of just description of Matt taking in the sights and smells and sounds of a well-ordered camp. So we're back to Matt now. We're back to the band. We're kind of resetting this, but it's also the heavy description is actually doing something more than just painting a scene for us, because something else this scene does on page 764 and 765 is, for all of his protestations, Matt is a military man now, which seems odd because you think of military, you think of regimentation, discipline, order. That is not Matt, except it kind of is. It's just in his own way. If you want to, I think probably the best book, and again, all the questions I have now versus when I was a lad reading these and I wanted to ask Jordan questions, it was always about it was always the books themselves. Now I'm more curious about the meta. So, for instance, what were some of the inspirations for Matt as a character? Because the idea of this great military man who's not really a military man, I mean, in a lot of ways, you look at Matt and you think there is no way that guy could last in a military setting because, again, regimentation, order, discipline. Matt is chaos, except he's not. He's chaos directed properly. And so, if you want a great insight into this, read the book 12 Strong, or it used to be called The Horse Soldiers until the movie was made about it, about the uh the Green Beret group that went into the Northern Alliance to help get things started right after 9/11. And it talks a lot about the mentality of Green Berets because they they do not conform to normal army discipline because they can't.
I'm going to take a different word than chaos. I'm going to use the word unorthodox.
Mm,
And we actually see that Jordan threw things in, I think specifically that you wouldn't connect, but they really do connect. Look at his fight with Galad and Gawain in book 3 with the quarterstaffs. So this is actually, it's a super important moment in these books because we always hate he's going to bring it when it happens, right? With Rand, we get the training from Lan. With Perrin, we get kind of the wolf mentality where that helps him, and he's also super big and strong. So you add those two things
mhm,
together, you have a very formidable opponent. With Matt, we have a game. Quarterstaves was a game during Beltane, and he talks about the only person being better was his dad.
mhm,
And what's the difference between him and his dad? Experience. So he was gifted at it and he would do it and he would learn by doing, by play. And this is another key word, game and play.
mm,
There's a reason why this whole last thing is based on a board game. It's a game. Everything's a game to him. So, and another reason, there's so many different threads here that Jordan threw in there. Luck is a big thing for him. When people stumble forward in life, people think they're lucky when realistically they just see the world through a different perspective. We get back to the personality traits, which is why I'm here in this whole discussion. He's super high in openness. That's probably the biggest thing. Openness is only seeing things that other people don't see and understanding them. That's all it is. Not not being heuristically married to your idea of the world, but actually seeing the world as it actually is. And he sees the world as it actually is. And this is something that's true for human beings. You see the innovators of the world, they just see things differently. Where someone who's like a really good engineer, it has his heuristic of what this machine should do, and they make it run. The open person would be very bad at that. And so it's unorthodox. He beat Gawain and Galad because when you go to become a warder, you learn the axe, the sword, the spear. You learn this and that, da 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 da. because that's what a warrior is.
That
And
actually
he
that
came in with
segues
with a
perfectly into this scene, which is one of the better Sanderson written Matt scenes, which is him talking about boots.
mhm.
Now, again, as he does take it a little too far. So it starts on page 765, where he's got all these, notes and reports and things, and the wind is stirring him around. And he doesn't have a paperweight, so he just takes off his boot and he sets it down. And then Sanderson takes the joke too far. He should have just stopped it there. Just shut up. Him taking off his boot, his muddy boot, and setting it on top of these reports. That's good enough, Matt. Just leave it alone. But once you get past that, then he has this great exchange with Satal Anan about why he dislikes nobles. And he uses and then again, he takes it a little too far because he has Matt kind of acting dumb when Matt is clearly smart enough to know what he's saying. And it's to him, it's not an allegory, but he does understand. He is smart enough to know, yeah, I'm talking about more than just boots here. The boots are a representation of what the hell is wrong with nobles, which is that, as Matt puts it, your average guy has 3 boots, right? You have 3 pairs of boots. You got your work boots for when you got to do something unpleasant, whether it's mucking a stable or walking through the mud or whatever. And yeah, they don't fit perfectly. They might rub your feet a little wrong, but these are the boots you wear when you got to go muck the stable, where you got to go, trudge through the mud to check on your neighbor after the big storm, right? Your second best pair of boots. Well, those are the boots you wear to Beltane. Those are the boots you wear when you're invited over to the neighbor's house for dinner, you know. And Satal is, one of the reasons I like this, because as worldly as she is, she's still at her heart an Aes Sedai, and thus basically a noble. And she's confused and going, wait, don't you wear your best pair of boots, to Beltane? No, 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 no. You wear your best pair of boots when you're going on a long walk. Because if you're going on a long hike, you better be sure those boots fit perfectly, because you do not want that hot spot building up. You do not want. There you go.
Hiking
Yep.
boots.
And you spend a lot of time, if you're on your feet, if you're going hiking, if you're going walking, those shoes, those boots better fit good, and that matters, and it's such a great moment of Matt, the simple farmer who isn't. That's not what he is anymore, but because that's how he was raised, he gets these things. And that's what makes him such a great leader.
We always wonder about influences, and the timing of this writing here. One of the movies we've talked about a lot, we enjoy, is Glory. And what was one of the pivotal scenes in that movie?
Mm.
When they all got new boots.
Yeah.
He fought to get new boots for them.
Why does that? One of the greatest. I mean, this is saying something, because he's one of the greatest actors of our lifetime, Denzel Washington, in one of the greatest scenes of what I would say is easily one of the top 10 movies ever, or at least top 20 movies ever, is Glory. And probably the greatest scene is the scene where Denzel Washington gets whipped. Why? Because Morgan Freeman tells Matthew Broderick he wasn't running away. He was trying to find himself some boots, because you're on your feet all the time. You're walking all the time. And then he goes and he looks at the feet and goes, oh crap. And that leads to another brilliant scene, which is him going to the corrupt quartermaster and saying, I'm tired of playing these games.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to give my men what they deserve because they are soldiers, or I'm just gonna leave and let them deal with you, because I'm done playing your games, you fat bastard. Oh, I gotta go watch that movie now, because that movie's freaking awesome. Um, Speaking of, I recently saw the trailer to Gladiator 2, which used to be a joke and is now actually happening. And I think it's stupid and it's probably not going to be good, but because Denzel Washington's in it, I'm probably going to go see it.
Yeah. Well, discussion for another time. This goes along with some of the Clifton Duncan talks, where he makes the distinction. And I think he even posted something, or Critical Drinker posted something about Gladiator 2 with Denzel Washington, is this is how you do it right.
Hmm.
versus what we're seeing from like Disney and stupid crap like that. He said, no, he said, as a black actor, it was always an honor and a challenge to play a traditionally white person. And modern movies aren't treating it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said, because he was Duncan's a stage actor. He said, if I had to play Hamlet, which he'd done, I had to be twice as good as Hamlet as anybody else to be convincing. And that's the challenge we all wanted as traditional black actors. Now they're just taking some person and saying you're racist if you don't like me.
Hmm.
And it was the extra effort that actually made it worth it for him.
You're about to send me off on a tangent about why
That's what I said. I don't want to
Philadelphia
get
is.
started on that. We'll make it a whole separate
Well, put a
episode.
pin in that. At some point, I got to
Yeah.
go off on a rant of why Philadelphia, an Academy Award winning movie, one of the greats ever, and it could never be made today because of Denzel Washington's character and the fact that that is being played by a black man. They would never allow that. Anyway, chapter 53. Um, so this gets to one of the things I referenced reading the comments is you've got a really nice short scene here from Pavara's point of view. This is the kind of thing we should have seen much earlier. Now,
Mhm.
as things speed up and become more intense here towards the end, we get a lot more of these. We don't have a full chapter, we just have a little section within a chapter from a point of view, and then we switch to someone else, and then we switch to someone else. And this is the kind of thing we should have seen more of earlier, which is just a little scene to let us know what's going on with someone else. But the thing that kind of jumped out at me, and I meant to go down a rabbit hole and look for this, and it's probably just as well I didn't, is the idea of the uncanny valley, where that came from and how long that's been. Because, you know, now when people talk about it, they're talking about CG humans, right? That there comes a point where it's too real and it creeps people out. And there's actually been some studies done on this, which
Mhm.
are very interesting, which is what you do, or what some researchers have done, basically, is they take people and they say, display this emotion, look happy, look sad, look scared. And then they cut and paste and swap the top and bottom of the head. And so what they've found is that what seems to be the uncanny valley is when the eyes and the mouth don't match.
Mm.
So if you've so a
Which actually
CG or an
actually supports what I was
automaton,
about to say, which
yeah,
because I was going to say we've seen this, and look at attractiveness in anybody, but we probably see it most in Hollywood, is when someone's had enough work done on their face,
mm,
it reaches a point where you're just kind of ugh. But even
because
when it's not obviously wrong with them, the boys actress, the one that had all the work done between season two and or season whatever the last one is and the new one, you look at her and it's not as different as people are they're cherry picking photos to make her look, way
mhm.
different. But when you actually watch the show, you're like, it's not that much different, but there's still some weird
And
ick factor that's
it's
coming from
because
her.
it's probably, I should say, probably because she can't emote quite as well as she used to.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on here. And you see that, and we the reader should know what's going on here, but Pavara and then later Androl and others, they don't know what's going on, but they can look at someone and say, those eyes aren't right. That's,
hmm
at the end of the scene, Tarna turns and is smiling, and it's not just that you're saying things that are out of order, but then when you look at me and I go, those eyes are creepy. Something's not right here. So I do like that before the reader should know what's going on, but you might not. And before it becomes apparent to the reader, and definitely before the characters find out what's going on, I like the way they're clued in on that something is wrong because the eyes are wrong. I
hmm
really like that. Um, and then we switch to Perrin's point of view, which I like. I like that we get a final moment of him and Matt together. The friends saying goodbye and good luck. Um, I also like that on page 778, um, that he's talking to Fail, and he says, "Oh, I told her I needed to be there," talking about Egwene, "but I never said I was going to take Egwene's side. I trust Rand Fael, and it seems right to me that he'd need to break the seals. It's like making a sword. You usually don't want to forge one out of the pieces of a broken and ruined weapon. You get a new good steel to make it. Rather than patch the old seals, he'll need to make the new ones." I like this kind of reminder, but then also set up for the future that Perrin is the builder, that he's also the peacemaker. You
Hmm.
know, way back in book 2, remember when him and Matt come up and they see Rand looking at the banner that Moraine had hidden in his saddlebags. And Rand is pissed off that he's being manipulated. And Matt is, there he goes, putting on airs. And Perrin's the thoughtful one thinking and says, "Shut up, Matt." And he's thinking, and he's the one who plays peacemaker between Rand and Matt. And think how long ago that was set up, both in books and in time. That it was a couple. Jordan wrote this series over a couple of decades, and he already had that set up
Hmm.
of Perrin the builder, but that also makes Perrin the peacemaker, because conquerors don't build. It's the guy that comes next who does the building, who creates.
Hmm.
It wasn't Caesar who built the great monuments of Rome. It was the ones who came after. I've lost my place on my notes. Oh, okay. And then we get to Matt. Then we switch to Matt's point of view. So after Perrin is watching people, he's getting set up on the fields of Marilor. So we're setting up Marilor, but then we jump back to the small adventure, which I like. We're setting up the big thing, but now we still got this kind of small adventure thing that's going on. And on page 790, so really there's a lot of this and that and back and forth, and there's some okay action, but really the thing that jumps out at me is on the last page of this chapter, before we really start to dive into fighting through this, and that is on page 7990.
70, 90.
Shut up. 790. Noel says, "Rules have to make sense, Matt." It's true. That is something anyone
Well,
would say.
back to my previous point from about 10 minutes ago.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
what does Matt say? Matt says they have to be consistent, but they don't have to follow our logic.
Well, so for those that have followed this channel on all topics, everybody knows I hate mathematical models because mathematical models are the way things should be. Should be it, because we can't know the future, has an unlimited number of assumptions made to do that. And Matt, again, back to that open personality, is seeing the world the way it is versus the way it should be. The rules of the game, well, why are those the rules? Because this stuff is happening and that doesn't make sense with the rules. And that's where Matt is going into this tower. That's why he's the right man for the job.
That's why he had to be one of the three
Mm-hmm.
for it to succeed. Yeah. Yeah. Where was I? All right. So then chapter 54 is really kind of the action chapter of fighting through to to Moraine, and it's pretty good. I will say there. I'm curious, Scott, ideals, holler, and tell me what you think. There was something I couldn't quite put my finger on here, which is, while it was interesting, Jordan does a better job of conveying emotion, right? So, like I mentioned with the Jackie Chan, fight scenes versus the Bruce Lee fight scenes, of there's more there. There's more than just the action. So you're kind of pulled into it more. It's another example would be the the lightsaber duels in the prequels are much better, technically speaking. It's much more interesting, exciting action, but I don't care because he didn't do a good job of making me care about these characters.
Hmm.
The fight scene between Vader and Luke in Empire, and then again in Return of the Jedi, it's not great technically and tactically speaking. You're not looking at two master swordsmen. It's not it's not the Dread Pirate Roberts versus Inigo Montoya in The Princess
I
Bride.
am
It's
not
not that.
intended.
Exactly. But you care because you care about these characters and you care about the moment. I didn't feel, I knew he was trying to portray this sense of dread, this sense of this kind of manic, we got to get the hell out of here. Which way do we go? Which way do we go? Which way do we go? You know, the words are there, but the feelings aren't there. I didn't get that feeling of, you know, of danger and of what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here. But that brain. And it was similar with the Golem fight of, oh, this is interesting, but there just wasn't that feeling of of dread and and whatever other words I can't think of because my brain is totally fried right now.
Well, you
But
go back to your professional wrestling example.
hmm,
The underdog was okay. So you would always have those that were back. Okay, so anybody can channel themselves back to the '80s when Randy Savage and Junkyard Dog and all of those were the big names. You would remember that it would be they would come in and fight the local wrestlers, and then they would be getting themselves ready for WrestleMania or the pay-per-view where
mm-hmm.
they would fight each other. But it was always some local guy. You never got the billboard type wrestling matches on the Sunday morning
Yeah,
show.
no, you had to pay for those.
Yeah, you had to pay for those. But they would even still in there make a moment where it looked like the nobodies are gonna win.
And so a couple of times they
Yeah.
did, and you're like, holy cow.
Yeah, that's how they brought
Virgil,
up some people.
the
Where
one,
one,
two,
two,
three
three
kid.
kid, yeah, one, two,
Yeah,
three
that's the one
kid
I
came up.
remember most because he beat Razor Ramon, I think it was,
Yeah,
on a regular show, and you're like, holy cow.
but also they would do just enough of that, and you would get that moment like that, but you always knew that the wrestler was going to win, so it wasn't as exciting. But then in WrestleMania, that's where they're going to make their
But
money.
then
The
what
WrestleMania, you didn't know who was going to win, and it was.
but also what made that so exciting, if they did it right, and back when they were really good at the craft, it was the promos.
Mhm.
You know, kids these days, dang it, they don't know how to do a promo. And the whole point of the promo was to build the excitement of the fight, that you have to see this fight because these characters, Macho Man and Hulk, are they're more than just athletes, they're characters. And so you have to see this fight. You have to get this pay-per-view because they're building it. Um, but then of course you have to execute. So the promos can be great all you want, but then if you don't have a memorable fight, it's, oh well, that was a bit of a letdown.
Yeah, the big example I can think of is Ultimate Warrior was always losing until he had his Ultimate Warrior moment, and he started doing his little, and Hulk would be hitting him in the back, and nothing happening, and it was you don't get that here. You never think that Matt and Tom and Noel are going to lose.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is you kind of know going into it what's going to happen, which is Matt's going to save the day, and you're quite sure that Noel isn't coming back. You know,
Hmm.
it's a great moment when you get there. It is well done. It is well written, but it is, this chapter actually, if I kind of ran about it more when we're done, so I'll just briefly here. This chapter is a great example of why I find Sanderson's writing so forgettable, is because in the moment, no, it's Noel's moment is actually good, but then it fades very quickly afterwards. It doesn't have the lasting impact that Ingtar. It's very similar to Ingtar's death.
Well, no, I was just going to bring that up, but I'm going to talk about the difference. We talked about how Matt had to be there because of his mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Noel could have been somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
somebody you wanted to make it through.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the surprise here would have been if Noel made it out.
And Tom did
Ingtar,
it. Yeah.
Ingtar was
Yeah.
different because you didn't know his past until he made his little speech to
Yes.
Rand right
Yes.
before he became the Wall.
And you had had those moments while they were in camp, while they were on the road. You'd had those moments of Rand and then later Perrin talking to Ingtar to get to know who this guy is, so that when you do have that moment at the end of the Great Hunt, you're, oh God, no, Ingtar, no, not you. Of first, not you. You can't be a dark friend, and then, oh no, not you. You're not going to sacrifice yourself here while we all stand around and watch so that your sacrifices that are God, fuck you show. Anyway, let's put a pin in that because it's actually the next chapter where Noel makes his final stand. Um, on page 794, this is one of the really, genuinely good moments, and it's they're kind of surrounded. There are all these snakes and foxes in the darkness, kind of taunting them and talking to them. And one of them says something incredible here at the top of 794 that I love because it's not explained. And I love that it's not explained, which is, we are the near ancient, the warriors of final regret, the knowers of secrets. What the hell does that mean? I don't know and I don't care. It's great. It's these things are otherworldly, literally. Jordan gives us enough, has given us enough before now, and then now with Sanderson kind of fleshing out with all this dialogue of who and what these creatures are. We could go down some interesting rabbit holes, uh hypothesizing what this world is, where this world is, who these creatures are, but we can never be certain. And I love that because we shouldn't be, because this world is so mysterious. We shouldn't be certain.
I would say kind of a parallel is this is in its own way hell. You take that with the final regrets. I did
Mm,
this thing in life that was my undoing, and now not only am I dead, or whatever the stasis of this being is, but the hell of that would be knowing exactly why, and having everlasting knowledge would be a burden. People like, oh, I wish I knew everything. Dragon Age, that's one of the plots of one of them.
mm,
Spoiler alert.
mm.
You're trying to find everlasting knowledge. But then once somebody gets it, it's like, this is actually horrible. This is not helpful. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I am in a living hell, knowing everything. And that's kind of, I would parallel this to kind of like a hell-like state.
Mm.
In Lucifer, the show, they had you learned this early on, so it's not a huge spoiler, but what hell was for people was a loop of the demise of their life. They call them hell loops. They're basically reliving over and over and over and over why they fell from grace. And that's kind of paralleled here, I think.
um and then when he gets to Moraine, there's this great moment where Matt is looking at her and thinking, holy crap, there she is. It's real. She's really alive. And something that kind of hit me is that, look on the back of the book here. We're on book 13, Towers of Midnight. Book 5, The Fires of Heaven, is when Moraine disappeared. And yet she was such a real and integral character that she's never gone away, either in the minds of the reader or in the minds of the characters. She has been referenced a number of times since then. That is set up and payoff, man.
Mhm.
That more, this moment here is, could be, we could have skipped all of this, probably better off for it. Crap to do. I gotta go build a fence. Anyway, we could have skipped all of this and just talked about this moment. Because again, one of the reasons I wanted to do this, because there was no setup, so there was no payoff in the show. That is one of the critical problems of modern storytelling. Jordan's setup was so masterful that he gave you someone who was very mysterious. We didn't get a lot of, we got very few Moraine points of view. And even in her own mind, she was kind of cagey, right? So you think about that scene from The Great Hunt that we spent a lot of time on, which is one of the few times you actually see Moraine in The Great Hunt at all, and it's from her point of view, and yet even in her own mind, she's very cagey, and it makes sense because that's who she is and how she is, and it's Jordan perpetuate the mystery, and then she disappears at the end of book 5. And now here we are at the end of book 13, and she's back, and it lands because Jordan did such a masterful job of setting up that you have this incredible payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And one of I you know uh I'd love to be able to ask Sanderson some questions, and one of them at kind of the top of my list would be, what were your notes for this scene? What were your notes for the Tower of Genji? Because there's a line here on 798 that I love because it is so perfect for both Matt and for Moraine. This is I've said before, one of the marks of great storytelling is that a scene does more than one thing. And so this line here tells you a lot about Matt, but also tells you a lot about Moraine, which is that, let me see here. Light, her motive seemed clear to him now. That did not make him any less angry with her, but it did make him grateful. Because there is still this element of resentfulness that you yanked me away from my life. And this really, speaking of setup and payoff, this goes back to his conversation with Satal Anan, is why he doesn't like Aes Sedai is because, damn it, sometimes a man just wants to do what he wants to do. And he wants to know, yeah, I might fall flat on my face, but I'll know that I did it. I don't want to be led around by the nose. I don't want to be pushed. I want to live my own life. And so, as much as he is grateful, the last line of that, but made him grateful because Moraine took him out of this boring life. He craved adventure. He craved excitement. And she allowed him to go to live that life. Granted, there's lots of death and doom around him at all times, but he is grateful for that. But there still is this resentment of, hey, you yanked me out of my life against my will. But I understand now because I've done a hell of a lot of growing up in the past 2 years. And that also tells you a lot about Moraine, is that she could have that impact on people.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Speaking of,
also speaking of show versus book, this is a Moraine that makes a lot of mistakes.
mm,
Because in that same process that you just described, she had no idea what to do with these 3 boys.
yeah,
She knew what the ultimate goal was, but she had no idea how to, I mean, go back to the New Spring. She doesn't understand boys or men at all
yeah,
as
yeah.
as lovers or as a parent. And
She gets annoyed with Lan because Lan is growing so close to Rand, but Rand needed that. Rand would not have made it to where he is now if Lan had not gotten too close to Rand.
and she doesn't know how to handle Matt as the rambunctious child, other
Mhm.
than stop doing that, sit down and shut up, stop doing that.
She thinks she understands Perrin. Look at book 3. She thinks she understands Perrin because Perrin is the more orderly one, right? So she can tell him what to do, but she ends up pushing him a little too hard and a little too far
Mm-hmm.
because she doesn't understand. Well, yeah, but he's still a man. He's still his own man.
Well, what she does is he was the kid that sat down and listened in class, but she made him overly obedient
Mm-hmm.
to like I said, the heuristics versus the algorithm. He was like, this is the way life should be. I was told. I sat down. I did what I was supposed to do. Why are things not working out?
Yeah, that's a great point because in Fires of Heaven, or not Fires of Heaven, Shadow Rising, both her and Egwene are surprised and annoyed that Perrin has run off. He didn't run off. He went back to do what he needed to do as a man, as he saw it. He wasn't running away from anything. He was running to. You didn't see it because you thought you had him collared. You thought you and you didn't. to her credit though, and that's when she finally when she wakes up and she starts talking, you get a lot of that. She recognizes, and that's why she's so great and why Elaine is so annoying. Back to griping about her is Elaine never has that moments. There are a lot of moments where Elaine is humbled, but she never gains humility. Moraine is humbled seriously, and she actually takes those lessons to heart and gains some serious humility, which is why she became so likable at the end. Because in Fires of Heaven, as she says to Egwene, I remembered how to wield Sidar. You have to surrender. And Egwene is like, what are you talking about? And Moraine is just, yep, I get it. You know, years bring wisdom, experience brings wisdom, and I get it now.
You know, that
Um,
actually, this wasn't this wasn't a thought before this moment, because like we talked about with the uncanny value, sometimes you see something and you just don't really think it's right and you don't like it, but you can't explain why just yet. I think we just explained why with the show and the books. In the books, we just explained how Moraine was fallible too. She couldn't, she made mistakes. She didn't understand this. And Matt just realized, oh, this is what she was doing, which shows actually guilt on both sides. It shows I
that's a
was
good
a
point.
young, stupid boy, and she had made a lot of mistakes. In the show, the message you're getting is if they just listened to Moraine, everything would be fine.
That's a damn good point because,
It's
um,
it's it's Rand's
yeah,
fault he's in this situation. It's Matt's fault he's an idiot. It's Perrin's fault he's good like this all the time. If they just listened to her, and you're getting that message through the first two seasons, if they just listened to her, she knows what's best, which fits right in the mold of they said we're going to focus the show around Moraine.
yeah, it's a good point because this moment works because they have both grown so much. It's why the moment works, you know, uh, um, logistically, because Matt has grown so much, he's able to come here and pull off this incredible thing that even Brigitte couldn't pull off. But then it also works on a deeper level, character wise, to really hit you, the reader, emotionally. Speaking of hitting you emotionally and set up and pay off, all the way back to book 3, where he comes jumping out of the top of a barn in the darkness like a damn fool hero. And then he has this thought here, well, burn me for a fool, Matt thought. Maybe I am a hero after all, because he knows the price and he says, F you, fine, take it, I'll pay it. It's got to be paid. So here you go. Come and get it, you dirty goat suckers. And it works because it is organically Matt.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's also true that Matt never saw himself as a hero before because he was always just acting on instinct. He jumped down out of that hayloft to protect a woman who was getting, you know, threatened by a group of like 4 guys, right? He didn't think. Well, now he has time to think. And so he realizes, oh, yeah, I guess this is pretty damn heroic because letting them pluck out your freaking eye, this is a big effing deal.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I flinch every time I read this.
it's still in character though, because how many of those reactionary moments were this is going to be painful, but the other side is worse. This woman dying is less
Mm-hmm.
painful for me than jumping out of this barn and taking a few cuts. This is we either all die or I go through a little pain.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we make a choice, most of the time, even reactionarily, we at least err on the side of saving ourselves for later. That was a horrible way of saying it, but of making the best out of a situation. And this is just the first time he's actually been able to sit down and say, not sit down, but look at it and go, wow, I know both sides of what's happening. This isn't just, oh, this will get us out of this. This is the best move right now, or reactionary. It's still a reaction. It's just a reaction in slow-mo where he knows the end result of both sides. He's still just surviving.
Um, then he has this moment on the same page where he hollers at him. And I'm just gonna kind of mention this and put a pin in it because I was putting a note there on my epilogue notes that I maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this after the series. I'm interested if this line is here for potential sequels, which is, and I'll find a way to free my mind from you forever. You won't have me. Matrim Cawthon is not your bloody puppet. And it makes me wonder if that was one of the ideas for a subsequent Matt story of him trying to find a way to free his mind from that connection to the Aelfin and the Eelfin.
Well, if you go by the little bit that's leaked out of what was supposed to be out there, he
Yeah, just
becomes
that
an
little snippet.
alcoholic. So,
So yeah, down on his luck, something funky happening, maybe.
yeah.
All right. And then they get Moraine and then they have to get the heck out of there. I do like what leads to this kind of chase at the end of Matt's Matt, and he very masterfully and almost perfectly deals with them in making his bargain. But he's still a human. He's not perfect, and he makes one little slip, which is, as Noel points out, you said the foxes can't mess with us. And then there's also a great moment because he doesn't have to expound on it. Matt just immediately realizes, oh shit.
Hmm.
So and that is, to his credit, as much as I complain about him, of where he's better than so many modern writers, is that uh he would have dwelled on that. Um and instead it's just run, Matt yelled. Which direction? Noel asked, alarmed. Any direction, so long as it's away from them. Um and then that leads to chapter 55, which is where the one left behind gets left behind.
Hmm.
Um I do genuinely enjoy his last moment, which is Noel's last line is if you meet a Malkiri, if you ever meet a Malkiri, you tell him Jane Farstrider died clean. It's just again, as we've kind of been griping about a bit here, it's a damn shame we didn't get a little more here and there of Noel since we first met him to really drive that home and really make you feel it the way you felt it when because it is very much, and I don't think this is lazy. I think this is on purpose, that there is a kind of obvious parallel to Ingtar because they are both Borderlanders.
Hmm.
And so they are both making a similar, you know what? I'm going to choose my end and I'm going to make it here.
Yeah, but Ingtar was so pivotal in Rand's development that it made the moment hit.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
Noel was kind of they put him in there as a companion, but you didn't see him be a very pivotal role in how Matt progressed as a
You know,
person.
here's a
This
thought.
would okay, Talonvor should have been here. I've been racking my brain
Mm,
this whole time on who would have been better here. It's okay if it's predictable, which Noel was pretty predictable, but you better make that scene amazing. Whereas had it been somebody like Talonvor, which it probably couldn't have been because you need somebody with the band, but somebody that had that impact on Matt's life,
yeah.
it would have been better. And I don't know who you could have put in there other than him to be that impactful in Matt's life.
To make Matt feel it.
Maybe even
Yeah.
had you had Jylen stay a more pivotal part of the tryst of Matt, Tom, and Jylen instead of him leaving with the Aes Sedai.
Mm,
That might have been a little better too. It had to be
that would
somebody,
have.
it's either got to be unexpected or so well written that you don't care.
Here's a very small change that might have actually made it better that I just thought of. Rather than saying if you see a Malkiri, because he left that life behind a long time ago. What if instead of saying that, he would have said, tell Oliver?
Hmm. Hmm.
That would have made it more personal and more real. And from what we have seen of Noel, we have heard about Jane Farstrider, but we don't know Jane Farstrider. We know Noel,
Hmm.
and Noel is Oliver's pal. He tells him cool stories. He plays snakes and foxes with him. I think that one little change would have made that so much more impactful. Of
Yeah, and
tell
that's the
Oliver.
thing. It's okay to be predictable in some ways, which
Mhm.
we all knew going into this. The third one wasn't going to make it, and that's Noel. And you get the little bit of this is the cap on an amazing life.
Hmm. Hmm.
But you needed a connection there, despite that would have been, or even had this written from his point of view. That might have been, you know,
Yeah.
because he's like, you could have had that duality where there
God, yeah, that's a
there's
good, really good point.
yeah, there's nothing left
We
for me but this, but Oliver's gonna miss me. I'm
we
gonna
never
miss
got a
these
Noel
people.
point of view, but if the first half of
We
this
did. We got a
chapter would
null
have
point of
been,
view
oh, we did, but that really short snippet that you don't even know
when you
it's Noel,
first meet
though,
him.
because
Yeah,
yeah,
he's
because
got his gnarls fingers, and
it's
yeah.
at the very end of, I think it's the end of Path of Daggers, and then we see him
Hmm.
at the beginning of Winter's Heart when he rescues Matt. Um, Dang it, the more I think about it, the more I like that because part of the point of the stories when you're telling stories to a child is to teach them lessons that they don't know they're learning.
Hmm.
And what better lesson to this is the end of Jane Farstrider. This is the end of all those stories I told you. When you become a man, you're going to have to make choices like this.
Hmm.
All right. Uh, chapter 56 is Egwene, so I don't we're not getting any better here. Um,
Yeah, let's. Can we power this one home?
yeah, there's really it's only a couple pages here, and yet it's like yes, but yes, but I mean my notes here. I have so many notes just here on page 815, and it's all good Egwene, bad Egwene, good Egwene, bad Egwene. So she has this comment here where she's talking to Gawain, where she says about Rand, he knows he shouldn't break the seals. She's basically saying, "Oh, you know you shouldn't do that, and so you're telling me this because you're asking, this is a cry for help. No, sometimes I'm just saying the thing I'm saying." Um, and one of her problems is she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And something that kind of popped into my head here is that while her and Rand's story arc are very parallel, she has a very Perrin way of thinking of this is the way it should be, so this is the way it is. And that is one of the things Perrin has to learn the hard way is the way it should be is not the way it is, and you have to live with that.
Well, we touched on this with the Moiraine's handling of them. He does have a
Yes.
feminine way of thinking. Sit down, shut up, learn, and this is how it should be.
Yep. Think it through, run it all through in your head and don't speak until you've got a good grasp of what's going on here. Um, but then right after that, you get this, kind of good Egwene, which is that she has this thought about how she has to, even if she gets annoyed, she has to work with the hall. She has to make sure they know she's taking their advice. But on the other hand, she also recognizes I can't let them steamroll me. So I have to play this delicate balance. Um, but then there's also this, you morons, because there's this nice foreshadowing with Gawain, as well as, so you have this moment where it's nice that, they're fitting into their roles together. They've kind of they went through this rough patch and they've kind of figured out, okay, this is how we live together. This is how we are a couple. This is how we complement each other. And he's settling into this role nicely. But then she notices he has these three strange rings he's wearing around his neck, which we, the reader, know what those are, and that he's a moron for carrying them around. But then the bad is now, if only I cared.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, there's all this, but then you get this other really that's at the end of her point of view section. There's actually this really nice moment where Gawain sees what the hell? It can't be. And he goes running off and she's going, what are you doing? And she's kind of annoyed. And then she realizes, wait, who's that older woman? And she realizes it's Morghese and and so she hangs back. because she understands. This is where, this is where Egwene is good. Egwene, in my view, which is this understanding that while personally I feel and I think these things, I am an office. I am more than just Egwene. I am the Emerald seat. And so I'm going to hang back here a minute because as soon as I step up, everyone has to bow to the Emerald seat. And I don't want to ruin this very personal, emotional moment for, you know, not only, not only this man I love, but then his family. They need their moment. And so I really liked that Egwene moment there. It's just, much like a lot of the stuff we've griped about here, it's a damn shame it wasn't set up a little better. Yeah, the setup is there, but the setup could have been more impactful. It could have been better, could have been stretched out a little
Mm-hmm.
more. Um, and then we switch to the Black Tower and Androl's point of view. And I don't want to dwell on this too much because I may talk about this more the next book when we see more of Androl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the problem with introducing characters late, is we had discussed this in a previous one, so I'm not going to go too long on it, but had he been somebody we already knew, it would
Abel.
have, yeah,
I mentioned this before,
yeah.
and in reading this section, I thought, because at 4 I said it could be, but I don't know if it would work. And then as I read this section, I thought, you know what? No, this could have been Abel, and it would have been awesome. Here's why: because Androl has this talent for gateways, and he thinks, but again, it's much like with the Elfin and the Eelfin. It's you get this hint, but you don't know for sure. He thinks, well, it's because I love to travel. I've been all over the world. I've traveled more, and you got a little bit of that when you first met him. That still could have worked with Abel because Abel wants to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Abel wants to be like his son. That's where Matt gets it from. But what if you had made Abel a recent widower, which would have given him that strong connection with Tam that he has?
And you could even have had that happen in book 4.
And
Yeah.
my eldest, my son, has gone off on these adventures, and now with Varen and Alana coming through, now my daughters are going off to the tower. And I looked this up to double check to be sure. Bode has the spark.
Mm-hmm. So you would
So
you would have a genetic component, you would have all
so
of this, yeah.
my daughters are going off to learn, and one of them has the spark. Maybe I can learn to channel. And what an adventure that would be, for Abel to go off and do this. And so a lot of the character traits that you see with Androl here, you could have had with Abel. But not only that, think about Abel, the kind of Matt gets that jokester personality from somewhere. And we see a little bit of it in Shadow Rising when Perrin is interacting with Tam and Abel. But now if you were behind his head and you could, kind of Robin Williams style, where everyone was shocked that this funny man killed himself. And now you go behind his head and you realize, oh, a lot of that's an act because he's kind of sad and lonely.
Well, not everybody knows what's in there though. You get these itches, kind of mental itches to do things, and that would have
Mm-hmm.
been the motivator. And even you could have modified an earlier seed, because remember he was doing leather working
mm-hmm,
when we first meet him. You could have had him mending bridles for
mm-hmm,
horses, because that's what Abel did,
mm-hmm.
was horse trading and all of that. So it would have been a slight change to everything you have here. So and
But
also it could have been a lead into, remember I said the best ending for Abel way back in spoilers. It would have put him right in the right place for that too.
exactly, and
Yeah.
then and then and then joining with Pavara would have
Well, and also think of the
helped make
moment
sense for
when
them to
Matt
be there.
realizes his dad could channel after all we went through with Rand and everything. So
Well,
you
and
yeah.
same here. You have this moment here where he goes and he says, "Okay, I got to find us some allies," and he goes to Pavara. You add that wariness, that same wariness that Matt has, and but also the conflict because he's not Matt. He has that wariness, but my daughters are going to become Aes Sedai. Oh God, this is weird, but it would give the impetus for I gotta trust these people because my daughter's gonna be one, right?
Hmm.
But then also I had this thought of, man, what a character moment if instead of this rando, it was Abel, and we get behind his head and we realize, oh, he he's not. the jokester Matt is. There's some depth there because again, he needs to be a widower because of what happens with Androl and Pavera. He needs to be single, and here's someone who desperately misses his wife. And now here's this companion that he wasn't expecting that has come along to help complete him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, damn it, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and I think Jordan really we talked about this from the beginning, kind of contrivances, versus what should organically be there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think he overcorrected in the sense that you've got so many characters that you have to keep track of. And this one coming along within, book 13 of 14, where there almost needs to be some of that connectivity, even if it seems a little bit contrived, to kind of pull everything together. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he overcorrected where he could have included some of these other, and then as we get closer to the end, you see some that is like, oh, that was that's the cool moment, which
Mm-hmm.
seems very contrived.
Speaking of contrivances, there's a big one in
Yeah.
the epilogue I want to get to. So chapter 57, really, it's we switch back to Matt, and there's a couple of interesting moments here, but the big one is on page 823, where Matt is looking at Moraine and he's listening to her talk about her captivity, and he has this thought of humbled, cast down. That made her seem stronger to him for some reason, because it is. When you learn those lessons of humility, that does make you stronger.
Mm-hmm.
My very first wrestling match was what were you talking about earlier that made me think of this? But anyway, um my first wrestling match was a joke. My very first match was against someone who had won second or third place in the European finals the year before and did freestyle wrestling in the off season. He beat me in 13 seconds. It
It's like
was I
it's like my first MMA fight. I got my ass kicked.
I
Yeah.
literally didn't know what happened. I literally didn't know what happened. I walked over to, and it wasn't even because, it wasn't an important match, and there was another match going on. So my coach was over on the other side of the gym. So it was one of the seniors on the team. One of the team captains was in my corner, and I walked up to Casey and I said, "What happened? What was that?" And he said, and that's when he told me, "Yeah, I didn't want to tell you before, but this guy, medaled at the European finals the year before, and he does freestyle in the off season, and that was a freestyle move that you've never seen before. You had no chance. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." It was the humbling came later when I got some experience under my belt and I got a few victories, and I thought, "Hey, I'm pretty good at this." And then I matched up against someone who was just a little bit better than me, and it was my first like legitimately hard match because I lost in double overtime, which for anyone who doesn't know, overtime in wrestling sucks balls. You're already tired, man. You're already just completely worn. Double overtime sucks.
Anything after the first 2 minutes, if you make it that long in a combat sport, sucks. It starts to become, oh my goodness, all that jogging I did
Mm-hmm.
means nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
the first guy I fought in the ring, this one's on YouTube, unfortunately, and it's probably the most clear picture you're going to get of a fight from me on YouTube, because it was professionally filmed and posted. But I, this is because you have to talk about the learning experience that comes out of it for the growth. Is I went into there and I've always been kind of gifted on the ground, but at that point, I thought my kung fu skills were going to come through, not against the Golden Gloves boxer, because I went out there ready to go Bruce Lee style and got jacked in the nose within 5 seconds of the fight. And that's about how long it takes you to cross the ring and or the
Everybody
cage.
got pinned until they get punched in the face.
And then I basically squirmed around for a round and a half until he choked me out. So that's pretty much the extent of that fight. And then it was like, wow, I got subbed. And I've always been good on the ground, so I never focused on it.
Mm.
And then it was like, oh, okay. So it was
I got
that
some work to
humbling
do.
moment to to
Yeah.
to, to
Yeah.
grow. And it actually allowed me to take a step back and actually play to my strengths and not try to be cool, you
And there's
know.
a great parallel here because this is, you know, very shortly here we're going to get to the epilogue and Rand's first point of view in Forever, and that's what happened to Rand. You know, there's this great parallel between Moiraine and Rand and how they became stronger by being humbled. Only other thought I have about this chapter here is at the very end where Matt throws a dagger blindly behind him and he hits a rabbit. Um, and he's still got his luck. Um, why, how, and does it matter? Those might be thoughts to talk about in the epilogue some more of Matt's luck and what's all that tied to. And still got it. Because that is kind of supernatural, a supernatural part of Matt.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then we get to the epilogue, and there are
Well, this is a bit of writing though, because we have moments of like that in the Jordan series.
mhm.
But he made a very good point of pointing out how it was the pattern trying to create something, whereas this was just a quippy moment.
But also Matt's skill. So like one of the big luck moments is when he at the very beginning of Fires of Heaven when they're throwing daggers as a competition,
Mm-hmm.
and he brags that he could do it blindfolded. There's a description there where he takes a moment to assess the situation. So he's kind of there's a skill element there of him
Mm-hmm.
thinking, okay, you know, let me visualize in my head, let me look around.
We call it
I
field and
got the
court
distance.
awareness.
I've got
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
look at a really good wide receiver tiptoeing as they make the reception. Are they looking at their feet? No,
Well,
they're focused on the ball.
I was thinking more like a gymnast or a figure skater when you see them right before their routine and their eyes are closed because they're literally visualizing
Hmm.
themselves doing
Well,
it.
when they do the backflip on the balance beam, they can't see it.
Yeah.
They have to
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
know the
Yeah.
whole place, right? To the precision of this thick, right?
Yeah. 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 All right. Epilogue. Some interesting moments here. We start with Grendel, who I think this is as close as we get to a confirmation of who killed Asmodine because Shidar Heron shows up and says, "Three chosen destroyed by your actions." All right. Well, we know Masana because he talks about that, the dream spike.
Hmm.
We talked about brain fart.
Samuel.
No, the dude inside the hot chick's body.
Oh,
Arangar.
yeah, Arangar, yeah.
Yeah, that was the other one. Well, wait, who's the third one? Well, that's about as close as you're going to get to a confirmation there. But the thing the interesting thing about here is how
Well,
it
that could be Samuel because she was supposed to be there for him.
well, they all were though. So
Yeah, it was true.
that whole cabal was supposed to be there. Anyway, my note here is that Grendel got some figs and mice. Let your imagination run wild with what happens when it fades to black after Shidar Heron gets her, but I don't think it's going to be anything good. Um, and I like that even Grendel is literally trying to deal with the devil here. So, no, everything's fine. I got this. I got another plan. I got another plan. Not gonna work out for you there, honey. Um, but then the real oof moment of the epilogue here is Perrin, because Perrin finally does what Hopper told him to do, and he's gonna go talk to Boundless. And there's a couple of things. First of all, at the very beginning here, Perrin imposing his will on the world of dreams. That is no small thing. I mean, we already saw it with there is no spoon moment when he deflects Balefire and Egwene, the one who's actually had the formal training in the world of dream, goes, that shouldn't be possible. And Perrin's the wolf going, it is what it is. Just it is. It's just a weave.
Well,
Whatever.
which is it's disappointing to me because him imposing his will is actually contradictory to that. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Imposing is order,
Mm-hmm.
where is what it is what we just talked about with Matt, is taking in what really is.
Yeah.
And that was where Egwene and actually even the dreamers of the wise ones go wrong, is they still have a heuristic in their mind of what should be.
Then on the very next page, I don't think I've ever noticed this before, but there's this incredible little bit of setup this last moment of setup before the big reveal of who Boundless is. And it's at the very top of page 832. Boundless teased him, sending the image of Perrin as a bull trampling a stag. Remember, way back to the hunt.
Mhm.
That was one of Hopper's teaching moments. That hey, what are you talking about? Why are you blaming the wolves? All of us wolves knew that the hunt was over and let go of the stag. You're the one that almost killed the stag in the world of dreams. That's a you problem, buddy. And what happens here? The others had left that image alone, but Boundless continued to remember because he's not really a wolf. He's mostly a wolf, but there's still a man back there somewhere in that brain.
Mm.
And I'd never noticed that before. And I was like, holy crap, that is a great last little tidbit of setup before we reveal who Boundless actually is. And get the we get the human explanation for what Hopper was trying to explain but couldn't, because he's, as much as he can teach Perrin, he's still not a man. He still doesn't think like a man. So you need to go find this out, because I don't know how to explain this to you, that what you're fearing isn't a real thing, because Boundless didn't lose himself. He made this choice. Gnome was a wild animal because the world sucked so much he retreated into his own mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an incredible oof moment. And again, back to the frickin' setup and payoff. The that last little tidbit of setup of Boundless teasing him about the stag, and there should be that little clue of, wait, why is a wolf doing this? Well, because he's not. But that book frickin' 3, and we're in book 13.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this series is so impactful and why it's so infinitely rereadable. Um, all right. And we've talked a lot about Perrin, so we can just move on. I wanted to put a pin in that because it's so great. Um, then we switched to Oliver's point of view, which is kind of cool because what a minor character, and it's, hey, Oliver. Um, but again, another thing I don't think I've noticed before on page 835, Oliver wins the game. And Tominus goes, what? Wait, huh? That's impossible. You literally cannot win this game unless you cheat. He doesn't say the unless you cheat part because he catches himself because he doesn't want to ruin it for the kid, but you must have miscounted. I'd never noticed that before, but that can't be an accident that Oliver actually won Snakes and Foxes because Matt won Snakes and Foxes.
Mm-hmm.
But then here's where I go, this is one of my least favorite moments in the last 3 books, and it's not a character moment. A lot of my least favorite moments, like we bitched and moaned about Matt a lot, and it's because Sanderson just didn't quite get the style and the characters right. This is actually a plot moment that makes me go, ugh. The letter itself, Varen's letter itself, it is a decent explanation for why she did things the way she did things. And yet, this still seems like a contrivance to me. Am I wrong? We have had this letter warning us that Caemlyn's about to be attacked sitting in someone's desk for a month, and nobody did anything about it. But more than that, somehow nobody noticed, and somehow nobody thought to double up the guard on that way gate, despite the fact that Birgitte, the general of the guard, and Elaine have had numerous run-ins with dark friends in Black Hajah inside of Caemlyn.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm forgetting something. Maybe there will be better explanations in the next book in the actual battle of Caemlyn. But the fall of Caemlyn's just it's a big red light to me that goes, contrivance. I can't get past that feeling that this is horribly contrived. Y'all let me know if I'm alone here, but this really strikes me as one of the weaker plot points in the series.
Well, I think it not only is contrivance an accurate description, I think it's also just one more thing for us to keep track of. Where we everything's culminating towards this end, and it's like, oh, and by the way, this side point,
Yeah.
let's bring that back in here.
Um, then we get a little scene that's not that important, except it shows us these creepy red-veiled Aiel, who we've very briefly seen earlier, but now we see them a little more. And then we finally get Rand's first point of view at the end of this book. The last time we saw was the very end of the last book when he had his little moment of epiphany. And I think it's a very interesting subject for Rand's point of view. And I wonder how much we should overthink the fact that um what he sees is Lanfear. And that's what we see. Uh that's what we see with Rand's first point of view. I like that we see the he's just floating zen like meditating within his own dream because
Mm-hmm.
now that he has all those memories back, he can control these things. He is loose theron again, which means he has all those skills, which means he has some amount of dream training. So he's able to do all these things, and he's trying to find stillness because he knows what's about to happen is going to be very taxing. And so he understands I need to try and build up a reservoir of calm before I go into this, before I go to the fields of Marilor and do what I'm going to do and make my demands of the rulers here and all that. Um, but then I find it very interesting. And am I right in assuming that the reason his dreams, even as heavily warded as they are able to be invaded, is that this is Morden's doing? It's they still have that connection.
Maybe Morden's doing, but also remember, Lanfear was the most skilled at that.
That's true.
She was
And
more skilled than Lews Therin, so it
she
would,
did she
yeah.
did tell him in Fires of Heaven that, oh, you're warding your dreams. I could break those if I wanted to, and it would be very unpleasant.
Well,
So it's
and
possible that there are more subtle ways that she could get in if she wanted to.
this is also slightly biblically paralleled here, because what happened to Jesus in the desert before he,
Mm, that's an interesting thought too. Yeah.
yeah, she's basically borderline personality disorder. She's playing the victim right now. She has a plot for him, and she's playing the victim. Now there might be some truth to it. We don't know what
Mhm.
Morden's doing to her while she's under his control, but at the
Well,
same
and we
time,
know she knows that we know of her that any amount of control would make her feel like a victim, and she would hate that. Of
Mhm.
no, I am woman, hear me roar.
And so but she also knows Rand from her experience with him.
Yep.
He
Yeah, that's
he
true.
she has insight into his list without knowing about the list. She knows
Yeah.
his big weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last little scene is Lan with his army that he's gathered charging down into Tarwin's Gap, which don't want to flagellate the deceased equine, but that moment would have been so much better without all the previous nits that we've already
Hmm.
picked about Lan of yes, I am a king. This is my land. Get the hell out, you monsters. That's what he should have been saying a long time ago. Of he has this. I do like the moment where he specifically points out on Eileen, the man alone, the I reject that title. I am king of Malkir. It just there could have should have been a better build to that moment. And as we've said, it felt too much like his scenes in this book were a regression rather than a progression of character.
Hmm.
All right, but that is that for Towers of Midnight. So by golly, we're
Yep.
almost done.
Yeah, a long one this time, but we wanted to get through the book. We probably could have chunked that one up, but we were ready to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah, and there wasn't really a clean place to stop there. So power on through. I don't even remember where the next book opens. I don't even remember what the prologue is, but there are some interesting things that happen faux show that I'm looking forward to talking about. And as I said, especially the very, very end. I really want to get to that. And with that in mind, that's what I'm going to be thinking about as I, prep for these sessions is paying attention to those World of Dream moments and what does that mean and how does that impact the very, very end.
All right, sounds good. Keep the comments coming. We'll look forward to hearing from you again, Scott and Isomorphic. Anybody else who managed to make it through what 2.5 hours here ish, 2:15.
Yeah.
Don't spend all that time without dropping a comment, or at least hit the like button or whatever. So,
Yeah. All right. We will see y'all next week.
all right, later.